Welcome back. Now, the Independent Electoral Commission, that's the IEC, has expressed satisfaction at the manner in which by-elections across the country have gone. Now, earlier this week, 145 candidates, including 8 independents from 29 political parties, were going head-to-head in their respective wards. 40 wards were up for grabs in 25 municipalities in 6 provinces. The ANC has retained 27 of the 40 wards that it contested, but the governing party has also lost 1 ward and won 3 new wards. The DA, which contested 10 wards, has retained 6 of those, lost 4, while the Patriotic Alliance has won 2 new wards. The IFP, for their part, they've retained 1 ward and won another. The Better Residents Association in Mpumalanga, they've lost a ward. And according to the IEC, the average turnout for the by-election was 31.94%. And Wayne Sussman is an elections analyst, and he joins us now to unpack some of these results. Wayne, good to see you again. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to all the viewers.
Wayne, if we look at, just for starters, the voter turnout, let's just spend a moment on that. Now, we know generally when it comes to elections, the turnout tends to decrease all the time the further you move away from that landmark moment of a democratic dispensation. But the by-elections in general, they do see a very low turnout.
That's correct, particularly the closer you get to a general election and a local government election, and there tends to be lower turnout in urban areas where there might be more distractions than in rural areas or small towns across South Africa. So those are the trends we typically see. But it was still low in this round of by-election. But as I said, because we are so close to the local government elections, we can understand it in some way.
And then if we just get down and into the actual nitty-gritty of it, looking at perhaps, if you will, the big winners and losers, how do you call it?
The ANC are going into our local government elections with quite a lot of momentum. Remember, in America, you have the midterm elections. I call the local government elections in South Africa our midterms. And the midterm elections are usually when the party in power, the governing party, gets sent a reminder by voters to, we're going to keep you in check if you don't put up your socks. There's no sign of that happening right now for the ANC. If you look at the historic heartland of the ANC, provinces like Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, they had an excellent day on Wednesday. They won a ward off the DA in Ward 7 in Johannesburg, on the southern tip of Johannesburg, in Ennerdale and Finetown. There, the DA and the PA split the vote in Ennerdale, and the ANC was able to win that ward. That will really boost the morale of the party in Johannesburg. Remember, the party lost the city of Johannesburg in 2016. They have it back now, but they want to win the city outright. They also picked up a ward in eThekwini, in Durban, in the Komashu area. Now, what was more important here, I always expected them to take this ward off the DA, because the ANC had to deal with a popular former ANC candidate who ran as an independent in 2016, which split the vote. But what was more important was that they blunted the EFF's growth in eThekwini. The EFF have shown a lot of growth in eThekwini and southern KwaZulu-Natal in the last few by-elections. And what we saw on Wednesday was that the ANC were able to stop their advance and stop their growth in that particular area. So the ANC would be very, very happy. The one concern they might have is that they lost a very safe seat to the IFP, as you mentioned at the start of your show. That means the Upungolo Council is now hung, or the ANC don't have a majority there anymore. And they lost ground to the IFP in other parts of KwaZulu-Natal. And the final thing I want to mention about the ANC, which might be a good pivot to the DA, is that I really expected the ANC to win back 2 wards from the DA in the nation's capital, in Pretoria and Tshwane, and they weren't able to do so. And that would concern them somewhat, that they weren't able to get enough of their supporters to the polls in those 2 wards, which looked ripe for the picking.
So
would you like me to speak about the DA?
let's please speak about the DA, because not only do we go to sleep last night on news of another black leader in the DA resigning in Phumzile Van Dam, but it would seem as though the DA is also feeling some of the effects of perhaps their internal strife in the election polls. Let's talk about them and how they have fared.
What is uncategorical is that the party suffered a major setback in Eldorado Park and Ennerdale in Johannesburg. I want to remind viewers that in 2016, the Democratic Alliance got 9,535 more votes than the Patriotic Alliance in Ward 17 in Johannesburg and Eldorado Park. And for the Patriotic Alliance to now beat the DA by almost 3 votes to 1 in this particular ward is a major crisis for the DA. The DA built a very successful coalition over the last few years, of which coloured voters in our urban areas is a core part of that grouping. That was one of the reasons why Herman Mashaba became mayor in the city of Johannesburg. So the DA will have to do a lot of soul searching and think how they can get those voters back who left the party en masse in places like Eldorado Park and Ennerdale. There are other causes for concern. You see the continual rise of the Vryheidsfront Plus, the Freedom Front Plus, in Fairy Glen, which is not the typical Freedom Front area. The Freedom Front got over 30% of the vote there in that by-election. But a real nightmare scenario would have been for the DA if they lost that ward. So I think they still beat the Freedom Front by more than 2 votes to 1, but they're dealing with voters across South Africa who are saying, we would rather vote for a party which is unambiguous about who they represent, i.e. the Patriotic Alliance is a party led by Gayton McKenzie, which says first and foremost that we are here to represent coloured South Africans. A party like the Freedom Front Plus is a party who says first and foremost we are here as a party to represent Afrikaans-speaking South Africans, and they appeal to more conservative white Afrikaners. It's clear that voters are saying we'd rather support voters like that than a party like the Democratic Alliance, which is at times trying to be all things to all people.
Now, if you look at the Patriotic Alliance and what's happening here, and it really does create some sort of interest and an excitement to see what will happen in October. Because as you pointed out, in Eldorado Park, Ward 8, for example, the DA had in the previous, when they won that ward, they had 9,535 more votes, as you said, Wayne. So the PA had previously polled 3% in Eldorado Park, and they've now shot up to 62%. That is nothing short of remarkable. The DA from 81% is now down to 22%. The ANC from 8%, they've gone up to 12%. So very interesting what's happening there, and using Eldorado Park perhaps as a microcosm of what could be happening in other coloured areas, traditional coloured areas across the country, because this is where the Patriotic Alliance has really been doing a lot of spade work. So in terms of just forecasting, looking ahead at where we're headed, do you think that this could become an interesting one to watch from that perspective, given that if you look at Patricia de Lille's Good Party, you would imagine that they would perhaps be looking at the same sort of constituencies, but not showing in these wards in this election?
Yeah, Good, by the way, like Action SA, have taken a decision to rather conserve their resources to fight the local government elections in the best way possible. That means that the stage has been left for a party like the Patriotic Alliance. There was also recently a by-election in Delft for the Cape Coloured Congress, for these parties to emerge and say, we are the real voice for disaffected coloured voters who feel like the people from the coloured community who feel that they've been left behind, who feel that the ANC's failed them, who feel that the DA haven't done a good enough job in representing them. So there is a potential vacuum. What's also interesting about the Patriotic Alliance, if you hear the anecdotes from people who are around Ward 17 and Ward 18, there are a lot of young people manning the booth, the stands outside the voting station. There are cars, there is music. So it made it very, very exciting to be associated with this political party. And yes, Gayton McKenzie has a very interesting past, but I think he is someone who, if I think of some of the senior coloured leaders in the Democratic Alliance, he's someone who is much more exciting to listen to. He says exactly what's on his mind. And they have also recently, if you know the famous Truman Prince in Beaufort West, he's left the ANC to join up with the Patriotic Alliance. So they are attracting larger-than-life characters who can have certain resonance in many communities. The challenge for the Patriotic Alliance is I do think there's a path to growth for them across Gauteng amongst coloured communities, possibly Nelson Mandela Bay, but will they be able to make real interests where the majority, inroads in the majority in places like the city of Cape Town, in the Cape Winelands district, which includes places like Paarl, because that's where most of the coloured voters are in South Africa, and that's obviously where the DA is traditionally the strongest.
And that's going to be an interesting one to watch for the upcoming local government elections, whether they are able to make those inroads and whether these minority communities, coloured communities, will actually be the ones who hold sway in who becomes kingmakers later on during those negotiations. So we'll talk about it, Wayne, you and I, and we'll watch these ones. But let's talk about the Free State for a moment and what's happening in the Free State, or what has happened during these by-elections. But before the Free State, Eastern Cape, and the ANC holding steady there, and in some instances we use the word bossing it in the Eastern Cape.
Yeah, so with regards to the Eastern Cape, first of all, let's focus on Nelson Mandela Bay. That's going to be a real battleground municipality in the 2021 local government elections. We know that the DA finished first there in 2016, and I mean, there was a lot of toing and froing, but the DA are back in control with some of their junior coalition partners. The ANC got over 90% of the vote in the new Brighton by-election. Yes, it's a historic stronghold, but they improved on their performance from 2016. That says to me that more and more voters are coming home. And if the ANC is able to replicate this in municipalities, in townships across Nelson Mandela Bay, there's a very strong chance that they can take back control of Nelson Mandela Bay in 2021. Remember, the ANC were in control of Nelson Mandela Bay for a portion of these last 5 years, but they were often led by the UDM or by the African Independent Congress. They never had the mayoral chain around their neck. So there will be a lot of momentum and a lot of encouragement from this. And you see this across the ground, across the province. In every by-election in Eastern Cape bar one, the ANC, as you said, bossed it. They absolutely taught the opposition a lesson, and this is a very good sign. Because remember, we're not just, when we look at a local government election, it's not just about the ward councillors. You get 2 or sometimes 3 ballots. You also want to get as many votes as you can for your party. So if the ANC's percentage vote share is going up in these by-elections, it means that they might be able to elect more proportional councillors and have more people to represent the party in those communities. And that's a great sign for the party.
And you look at Amatole, and then you also go to the Free State, and you look at the ANC, another troubled municipality in Maluti Apofung, again, winning there despite all of the service delivery protests, despite the disgruntlement that we report and hear of all the time from residents there, the ANC emerging victorious once more.
Yeah, there were fascinating by-elections in the Free State. With regards to Maluti Apofung, remember, the most difficult election day for the ANC since the 2019 elections was when they lost 10 wards in one day in August in 2019 in Maluti Apofung. This is around the Putatijaba area, and it was a real crisis for the party. Now, those 10 councillors, they came together with some of their other colleagues who defected from the ANC, and they formed a new organization called the Maluti Apofong MAP 16 Civic Movement. And they have now formed a political party. And they've been very active on the ground. And yes, they had a good showing. They lost by less than 100 votes, but they would have been desperate for a victory because that would have given them so much momentum. They would have encouraged the activists so much. And the ANC held on for a very, very important victory, which will really raise their spirits. I mean, of course, there's lots of challenges for the ANC, particularly in the Free State. This is the province where the Secretary General comes from, and yet they were able to hold on to this ward, even though their majority was reduced, even though they didn't do as well as they did in 2016, they will still be happy that they are sending back a new ANC ward councillor to represent this community for the next few months. But the MAP 16 movement is going to be a local party we need to watch on the road to the 2021 local government elections. And then just briefly, in Mpumalanga, if you know, is another municipality where the ANC has had major challenges. Their big service delivery issues. Their mayor was in hot water for remarks about the coloured community during the lockdown. And they held on to a ward in Mpumalanga. The DA made inroads there. The DA fielded a very popular person in Woodendal's Rus. But the ANC did enough to hold on to the ward. They got their voters to the poll. And that will also encourage their activists a lot as we march to the elections.
Fascinating results there, Wayne Sussman, and thanks so much for your expert analysis on all of this. Elections analyst Wayne Sussman speaking to us, helping us unpack some of the by-election results from Wednesday. Makes for a fascinating prospect as we head to local government elections in October. Right now, though, it's time for your latest news headlines. Final news update here on Morning Live.